Hello and welcome to this Innova Systems webinar with me, Adam Rose. In this video we're going to have a look at the Design Checker within SolidWorks. For an overview, we're just going to have a look first of all at what the Design Checker actually is and what it will do within the system. We can see it's a set of tools used to check parts, assemblies and drawings against a checklist of company standards. Basically this allows any company to reduce the time taken design validation and checking. Each part would obviously go through some kind of approval process as you're producing it, and the design checker allows us to actually minimize the amount of time needed for that approval process. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you how we actually get to the design checker and how we use it within SolidWorks. I've started up SolidWorks already. I'm going to open up a drawing that I'm going to check the model against. So here's my drawing, and this is what I want to check first of all. The first thing I need to do is turn on the Design Checker. We do that from the Tools menu under Add-ins. You'll see that the Design Checker is available from this list, and we can turn it on in this session. We can also turn it on for startup in the next session. Once we've started that item, we can go to the Tools menu and down to where it says Design Checker to use one of these options. So the first thing I'm going to do is check against this active document. So I'll select that item, and then we're shown the Design Checker with a few different standards files already created. I'm going to check it against the ISO standard, which will be created by default. You'll find that you may already have some standards in there if you used the Design Checker before. If we check it against the ISO standard, it's just going to be checked against the item that you choose in Document Properties. So we click Check Document, and it will go through the document and then show us those areas that don't match up with that document standard. The first one of which is the arrow style, and that's on a particular area of the model. We can see that we've got this arrow style, whereas we should have this preferred value. So we can correct that by clicking the Correct Selected button, or we can auto correct all. If you go through this document, you'll find that you can correct those errors one by one. So as we select and expand those items, you can see what the value should be. Going down this list, you'll see that the items for things like the document font, we've got it set to bold where it should be regular. For things like the arrow style, for particular dimension, well, we'll correct that as well. If we're using a table within the document, we may want to make sure that we've got the right spacing between cells. When we go down to this annotations section, you'll see this is all the annotations and notes within the document, some of which will actually be included within the template. So you do have to watch out for those items that are set to @template. We don't want to change the size of those font items. So I'll scroll down the list, and you'll come to a section where we've actually got items at drawing views. So I'll select those items with the Shift key and choose Correct Selected to use all of those at once. I'm then going to go further down the list, and this takes me on to page 2. I've then got a further set of items relating to drawing view 22 and 8. So I'll correct those, and we're actually going to ignore the rest of the changes that you could make in here. I'll just collapse that particular one and leave it there. I'll correct the rest of the items going down the list and selecting them one by one. Things like the text position. Okay. You can see the precision of dimensions. We've got certain items not meeting up to that with too much precision. We want it at 2 decimal places. We can correct those one by one, or we can correct the whole list. So having corrected this document, I could actually save the report away if I want to. I'll create a report on my machine. Okay. We can also add it into the design binder, which puts it into the file, which is quite useful. Okay, I'll view the report upon saving it. so we can have a look. So it just takes a minute just to create that text file, and then it will open it up within Microsoft Word. Here's the result. So we can see those problems within the model. Okay, the amount of issues we had, and the items that have been corrected already. So it's a really useful report to be able to send to someone or sort of analyze the results from. Okay, I'll close that down now. And what I want to do in this document is to recheck the document using this refresh. It then checks the document again. This is the only item left because we're ignoring those changes because we don't want to adjust the template. But we're actually finished with this document now, so I can close it down. What I'm going to do now is to show you how to build another check within SolidWorks. I'll open up another part model that we created. And what I'm going to do in here is to build up my own checking standard. I'll go to my design checker. We can click the build checks option, and we can create our own standard within this build checks tool to then actually make our own standards file. So I can add certain items within here by selecting them on the left hand side. They get added into this central column, which means the model will be checked against these. So for example, the dimensioning standard. I want to make sure that in this document the dimensioning standard is set to ISO. It will adjust the dimension standard to this preferred value shown on the right. We can also adjust the criticality within this particular item. So the more critical we make it, the higher up the list it will come in the results, and obviously the lower where it will come in the results. So it's set to high by default, so it means that everything appears at the same level. I'm going to do things like adjust the custom properties that I'm seeing in this document. So if I want to see certain custom properties, I can list them in here. I'll put in things like the description, and that can be text value. I want to see also a revision in this document. I also want to see within this model a material showing up in the custom properties. And for a material, I also want to say what the value is going to evaluate to. So we can choose an operator, okay, equal, not equal to, like, list, for example, starting with. I'm going to choose like, and then I'm going to put in here steel sheet. So if my custom property includes the text steel sheet, it will accept that and it won't throw up an error. I'm also going to check for dimension font to make sure that it is a particular type of font. I'm going to check it against Comic Sans. Click OK. Lower down the list, I want to also check if there's been any overridden mask properties within the file. It's a simple one to turn on. It just adds the item into the central column. And you'll see as I add each individual section, they get put in lower down below the previous. So as we select new items in this list, they just get appended to the bottom. We also have got a summary view if we do want to review those changes. Okay, so I'm going to go a bit further into this. You'll see that there's some checks for annotations and dimensions, maybe not so relevant for a part, but if I do go to the part document checks, I do have things like the material and the bend table. In the material section, I want to make sure that this model is a steel, some kind of steel. It doesn't matter exactly what, okay? They're all available from this list. Okay, what I'm going to do is to go and also make sure that we got fully defined sketch turned on, and that's something we can check in our features. We can make sure we're not getting any errors or warnings. Make sure our fully defined sketch is coming through, so that all sketches in the model are fully defined. We can check if there's any non-standard hole sizes for a hole wizard. Suppress features or feature positioning. That means basically if anything's been positioned wrongly from a fillet or a chamfered edge. Once we're done building this check file, we click the save button, and that allows us to save it away onto my machine. I'm going to overwrite an existing one that I created earlier on. Okay, so having made that change, I'll close this down, and I'm now going to check this document against that. So I'll go to the design checker, I'll hit the settings button, which takes me back to that original screen, and then I just click add standard. I can then go ahead and select that standard that I've just created, untick the existing one. We could choose two at once, and I'm going to check this as the existing document against that. Okay, so in this model, first of all, the first thing it's kicked up and it's shown a warning for is the custom properties. We can see that currently this material custom property is missing. This is something we do have to manually correct. So we go to File and we go to our custom properties menu, and then we can manually adjust this. So it wants to be some kind of sheet steel. I'm going to type in the value. Okay, so once we've added that one in, we'll click OK, and that adjusts. Now we just have to ignore this one for the meantime. We go lower down the list. We've got a warning within this design which has been kicked up. You see that there's a problem with sketch 40. If we have a look at this problem, you'll see that the sketch has currently got a dangling dimension. So we can quite easily link this back in. Okay, so I've linked that onto the left hand edge. I want to now just add a dimension just to hold it in place. Okay, slightly oversize that dimension. We'll just change it to 40 millimeters in there, and that'll bring it into place. Okay, you can see that the document units are currently set to IPS. You'll see in the bottom right. Okay, we can correct that one, and that should switch these over. So that's resolved the problem in sketch 40 and cut extrude 1. We've also got underdefined sketches in some of the areas. Sketch 40, which I've just dealt with, sketch 48, so I'll type in 48 and then I can edit that sketch. I'll bring myself normal to, and I'll add some dimensions in here. Okay. Okay, so having fully defined this sketch now, that solves that problem. I've also got sketch 52. Have a look for that one in the search bar. I can adjust this one and also add some dimensions in here to control the size. As I go through the design and add these in, the sketch will obviously become more and more defined. Okay, so that's fully defined this sketch now, and you'll see that's got rid of the problem. So what I can do now is just make sure that this last up problem we've got here, suppress features, well, we can unsuppress that by right clicking to get rid of that problem. Okay, then I'm going to refresh this document check, and we should find that it's corrected all the problems. You'll still see that this custom property, we've still got an issue here. The material, it's corrected it. Obviously we put the text the wrong way around, so we can just adjust that one very quickly. Okay, carbon steel sheet, you just cut and paste that text in. You do have to also make sure that you do have capitals turned on, and we've got the right amount of spaces in there. Okay, so you'll see the document is as per standard. So that means basically we've resolved all the issues in this model now. You'll see in certain areas, like we had the dimensions, having double clicked on this now, you'll be able to see the dimension text has changed over to Comic Sans for those little changes we've made. Okay, so I'll close this down, and I'm not going to save the document. I'm now going to open up a drawing which relates to this model as well. So to do that, I'll just open up my recent documents. This is a drawing which actually relates to the model we're just working on. In this drawing, I'm also going to build some checks, but we're going to have a look at some of the checks that you might be able to do associated with drawings rather than dimensions. Okay, so under the Design Checker, once again, the Build Checks tool, I'm going to create my new standard. I'll make sure I've got my standard size set to the right item. Unlike the other one, I want to make sure that my detail fonts are going to set to the right item. So on detail views, the font label, I want to set to Comic Sans. And I'll do that the same for the detail view label as well. So search for that one. Make sure they're both the same item. And once again, we've got it appending in this list, creating it one by one. Virtual sharps is quite a good one. It allows me to adjust whether the virtual sharp on any corner is showing a particular type. I want to set it to a dot type. We can specify any file locations in here if we want to. On the arrow style, I want to adjust. So for any particular notes we've inserted, we can insert a certain font style. Once again, I'm going to go for Comic Sans. For our dimensions, I want to make sure that the units are set to at least 3 decimal places in precision. Okay. I'm going to make sure we've got no overlapping dimensions, or where dimensions have had their text replaced. We can also make sure the text position is correct for where we want it. So I'll specify my values in here. Okay, now having done that, I can now specify some other items. The drawing selection here allows me to specify overlapping views or whether the display style isn't correct. So I can specify where I want the display style to be hidden lines visible, for example. So having entered those items, I can also do things like the template, making sure that we're set to third angle. Now, obviously not all of these checks are going to kick up a problem, but it's good to know the kind of things you can add in here. Okay, I'll save it over this document. And having built that check, now we can use it within this model. So on this right hand side, under my Design Checker once again, I'm going to browse and find that drawing check. I'll untick part checks and I'll check this document against those standards. We've got things like the dimensioning standard pop up straight away. I'll go correct that value. The detail font is obviously not showing up, so if we zoom in on this area, we can see the detail views. You can see the font type adjusting as we change this value. Okay. Virtual sharps, you'll see that currently it's set to a witness line. We can adjust that one so that it's set to a dot. Annotation fonts, for example, in these areas, I'll correct that so that it's set to Comic Sans. The dimension units, currently they're set to no precision on there. We can correct those so that we're getting 3 decimal places of precision. Any overlapping dimensions, well, this is something we have to manually do. And it means that we go into the document and we sort of drag the dimensions around to make sure they're in the correct location. We can also quite quickly adjust and solve the problem by highlighting over the sheet and just making sure that the break lines are turned on where we need them in the document. You'll see in certain areas now we've got break lines over the dimension. Where the dimensions have had their original text replaced, we can go in and we can actually modify those areas. So, for example, if I zoom out a little bit so we can see, when we select this item, it shows me which dimension has its text replaced. I can modify this dimension by selecting it. And to put it back to normal, we just put in the text dim in capitals. And that should set the value back to what it was. The text position will correct automatically. And the display style, you'll see that we currently got it on. If we select the views, it's currently set to hidden lines removed. I'm going to put it to hidden lines shown. And we should then be able to see the holes through the document. Okay, so having made those changes, we can then refresh. We should see the problems go away. We've still got a problem with the annotations there. I'll just correct those just to make sure that they've gone through properly, and then refresh once again. Okay, so it's not updating some of the items in the sheet format. That's not to worry. You can leave those items. So, having gone through the design checker now, we can have a look at some of the other areas you can use the design checker for. So I'll close it down. One of the other things we can do within here, if I hit recent documents, I'll open up a drawing. We can make the design checker learn from an existing document to build up a standards file. From the tools menu under design checker, I'll click learn checks wizard. Now notice that I've closed down the design checker on the right hand side. With the learn checks wizard, we can pick up standards from this document. So we can pick up the dimensioning standard, for example, that this document is using. What custom properties we've got in here. Any kind of units we're using in here, so dimensioning units. Okay, the font on particular views. So, we can go down this list and pick all of those items out. If it's just a general drawing, we can pick up things like your table font and your balloon font that we're using. Okay. You can go in here and you can choose any of these other items for annotations. I'm going to pick up things like layers in here to pick up any layers that have been used in the document. Okay, so hit the tick and then you should go through and it automatically brings up the design checker build tool. And we can see that those items have been automatically isolated and it's built up things like the custom properties that we need to insert in this document if we scroll up. Okay, it picks up things like the dimensioning standard that's been used. And we could use that then to check against another document. So it's quite a nice way of being able to pick out any problems within the model. Another way that works quite well for creating our standards files is to actually merge two that we've already created. So I'll check those merged. I'll check the part and the drawing ones that we've just made, and I'll merge them together to create one standards file that we can then save. That then creates a standards file on my machine. Okay, we can then check that against any part or model that we've got on the system. So that works quite well for creating our standards file if you've already got two created. Another thing we can use the design checker for is with the task scheduler. Task scheduler is under the SolidWorks tools in your start menu. You'll see that there is an option for design checker in here. The task scheduler allows you to schedule the thing to go through so the user doesn't have to initiate it. So in here we can add the standards file that we just created. We can also add a folder for the item to check through. Okay, and then we can specify when that check will go through. So we can specify whether it's going daily, weekly, or whatever. It will also correct any problems. And I want it to also add this into the design binder. So that means it'll be added into the design tree for any reports that are created. We click finish. Okay, and that will get added in. Now I'm not going to do it in this particular example because it takes a minute to run through. What I'm going to do alternatively is just to show you in this design what the completed one would look like. So I'll bring up this model that I've created. Okay, here's a drawing. Here's the changes that have been made. And on this design, I want to go through the document. And you see that the design binder shows up with 2 Word documents in it. This merge checks I'll open up. And it should open up in Word that results file that we were looking at earlier on. So a results file from this particular document. And whether items have actually been corrected or automatically or not. So those areas that haven't, we can then analyze and run the check again to be able to get rid of those. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of what the kind of things you can do with a design checker and how to make the best use of it in your system. Okay. So thanks very much for watching, and please get in touch if you have any further questions.